After I was revealed to be the true heir, I brutally dumped my girlfriend. Not only that, but I also humiliated her mercilessly. Heartbroken, she went abroad to study and didn't return for 5 years. As a high-flying investor, she even mentioned me in an interview with reporters. She said she was grateful I had abandoned her, that she wouldn't be where she is today without me. But she doesn't know the truth. I died the day she left the country. Chapter 1. I floated in mid-air, watching the woman surrounded by a crowd. It had been 5 years, and Victoria Graham had matured considerably. Unlike the naive girl from the past, she was confident and eloquent. In front of the reporters, her eyes filled with self-assurance. Then a reporter suddenly asked what had motivated Victoria to get to where she is today. The woman froze for a moment, then slowly curled her lips into an icy smile. My ex-boyfriend, I suppose. If he hadn't dumped me so brutally back then, I probably wouldn't be who I am today. So in that sense, I should thank him. Through the crowd, our eyes met. Hers were filled with hatred and mockery. For some reason, even as someone who no longer had a heart, I could still feel a pang of heartache. A gust of wind blew past, and I reached up to cover the empty space in my chest. My throat felt tight, as if something was lodged in it. Did Victoria really hate me that much? I followed Victoria all the way to an apartment building. She opened the door and threw herself into another man's arms. Vicky, you're finally back. The man's arms tightened, holding Victoria securely. When I saw his face clearly, my breath caught in my throat. Of all people, why did it have to be Ethan Sinclair? He was the main culprit behind my demise. Victoria, however, looked at him with complete dependency, her expression soft and affectionate. Watching them, I suddenly felt like I couldn't breathe. She loved Ethan, I could see it. Closing my eyes, I was flooded with memories of how we used to be. Once, she and I were just as happy. She would cling to me, whining that she wanted ice cream. I would pretend to be stern, lightly flicking her forehead. Do you know what day it is? You're the one who gets a stomachache from the cold. Victoria would pout and turn her head away. But I would step out for a bit and return with an ice cream in my hand. It was always strawberry, her favorite flavor. Just one bite, I'd say. Her face would instantly break into a radiant smile. Aji, you're the best. In that moment, looking at Victoria, my heart would melt completely. But now, everything had changed. The love we shared since childhood couldn't withstand the 5 years she spent abroad. She had finally fallen in love with someone else. Chapter 2. Thank you for coming back early to get our home ready, Ethan. The woman gently kissed the man's cheek, her eyes filled with tenderness. You can put me down now? Your heart isn't strong, Ethan. Don't overexert yourself. At that moment, I felt a string in my mind snap. Did she know? My gaze was fixed on the two of them. Ethan didn't let go immediately. Instead, he spun her around a few times before setting her down. Don't worry, Vicky. I'm completely fine now. Victoria's brow relaxed at his words, her tone filled with relief. Thank heavens. You survived a near-fatal car accident and found a perfectly matched heart just in time. In that instant, I was certain Victoria didn't know the truth. But what followed was an endless wave of sorrow. She was so relieved now because the man she loved was alive and healthy. What would she think if she knew that the heart beating in Ethan's chest was mine? What if she knew that the car accident I was in had been orchestrated by Ethan's parents, Marcus and Eleanor Sinclair, all to make me voluntarily agree to the heart transplant? How would she feel then? Would there be even a flicker of sadness in her heart? Victoria and I were childhood sweethearts. We grew up together, went to school together. In high school, I promised her we would get into the same university. The night before our college entrance exams, Victoria and I made a wish under the moon, to pass with flying colors and have our dreams come true. I dared to take her hand and she squeezed it back. Will this mess up our exams tomorrow? She asked. Meeting the girl's mischievous gaze, I couldn't help but smile. Of course not. She looked straight at me without speaking, but her eyes said more than 1,000 words. We both knew how the other felt. After the exams, Victoria and I got into the same university as we had wished and officially started dating. For 4 years, we were the campus couple everyone envied. Victoria and I worked hard, fighting for our future together. Every single plan I made for the future had Victoria in it. Chapter 3. At a university, every department had study abroad spots, and Victoria and I were both competing for one. She said we both had to fight for it to build a better future. That was until the Sinclair family came to me with a proposition. They wanted me to give my heart to save their son. It was such an absurd request that my immediate reaction was to refuse. The very next day, Victoria excitedly told me she had found a high-paying part-time job, tutoring the Sinclair's only son, Ethan Sinclair. Aji, I heard that Ethan has a heart condition, which is why he needs a private tutor. It's $1,000 an hour. We can definitely save enough for our study abroad fund. Seeing her so excited, I couldn't bring myself to tell her about the unbelievable offer. But fate seemed to be playing a cruel joke on me. My dad, Robert Clark, was diagnosed with a malignant tumor and needed a huge amount of money for surgery. That's when Ethan's parents descended like saviors, repeating their demand. "I'll give you a large sum of money for your father's treatment," Marcus Sinclair said. "I will also have a word with the university and arrange for the fully funded study, a broad spot in the finance department to be given to Victoria Graham. So what do you think? Care to reconsider?" In that moment, I gave in. But I wasn't resigned. Why me? I was so young. I had someone I wanted to grow old with. Countless times, I wanted to tell Victoria the truth. I wanted to give up to live. But then I would see my dad's face, ravaged by illness, and Victoria's exhausted expression when she came home. From her part-time job at night, my mother passed away when I was young, and my dad raised me all by himself. Victoria was running herself ragged, trying to save enough money for us to study abroad. Thinking of them, I finally convinced myself. Agree to it. It's better for everyone. And so the Sinclair family publicly announced that I was their long-lost son, switched at birth. I steeled myself and broke up with Victoria in the cruelest way possible. I knew I couldn't hold her back any longer. Her long future was destined to be without me. The day Victoria left the country, I went to see her off in secret. I only watched her from a distance. After that, I got into the car that was destined for my death, a strange sense of calm washing over me. The moment the brakes failed and the car crashed into the guardrail, the faces of my dad and Victoria flashed through my mind. How I wished I could have spent every day of my life with them. Chapter 4. Victoria and Ethan were all over each other, tumbling onto the bed. I couldn't stop myself from fleeing, but even through the door, the sounds were crystal clear. The feeling was like being subjected to death by 1,000 cuts. I stood frozen, unable to breathe. The woman I loved most had fallen for someone else, and that man was my murderer. I would never forget lying on that hospital bed, hovering on the brink of death. The man stood before me, looking down at me with contempt. "Your death served its purpose, you pauper. By the way, your Vicky is such a gentle and patient teacher." I didn't understand what Ethan meant back then, but I did now. He had fallen for Victoria, so right after his heart transplant, he rushed abroad to find her. My emotions churned within me, but I was powerless. What could a dead man do? After what felt like an eternity, the sounds finally subsided. In the evening, Victoria and Ethan emerged from the room, dressed. "Ethan, will you come to the class reunion with me later?" I was stunned. Could she mean our university class reunion? When the two went downstairs, I followed. It had started to drizzle outside and the air was heavy. The car drove to its destination, a high-end club. They pushed open the door to a private room filled with familiar faces. It was, indeed, our university class reunion. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet my fiancé, Ethan Sinclair." Victoria wrapped her arm around the man beside her, her face glowing with happiness. The crowd had mixed expressions, but in the end, They all offered their congratulations. After a few rounds of drinks, someone, emboldened by alcohol, let loose. If you ask me, I never would have guessed Sincere Clark was that kind of person. Becomes the real heir and just dumps his girlfriend. And now, she's found her happily ever after with the fake heir. Isn't that just dramatic? The chatter continued until Victoria smashed a bottle on the floor. The loud crash of glass silenced the room instantly. The person who had been speaking sobered up and quickly apologized. But Victoria didn't respond. Instead, she turned to my former roommate and asked, "Where is Sincere Clark now?" "I honestly don't know." Hearing the answer, Victoria scoffed. What a gold digger to think he'd cut off his best friends just like that. He's probably off living the high life somewhere. I looked at her face and couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Victoria, oh Victoria, if you knew I was nothing but a pile of cold bones, could you still say such things? Chapter 5. Beside her, Ethan gently tugged on her sleeve, putting on his usual innocent expression. "Vicky, my dad, Mr. Clark, I think he mentioned something when he kicked me out of the Sinclair family. He said he was giving Sincere a sum of money to travel the world." Listening to Ethan's sanctimonious words, I could only find it laughable. He was always the true heir. He was never kicked out. Thinking it over, a guess formed in my mind. This was probably his excuse to get close to Victoria. Looking at Victoria, she was, as expected, slightly taken aback. But she recovered quickly, wrapping her arms around Ethan to comfort him. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I shouldn't have brought up your painful memories." In that moment, a sliver of foolish hope rose within me. Was Victoria genuinely comforting Ethan, or was she remembering our past? We had promised each other that our honeymoon would be a trip around the world. Now, she must think I was the one who broke our vow first. Ha! How powerless I was. When the reunion ended, the group dispersed. I followed them downstairs and saw that the light drizzle had turned into a downpour. Under the cool night sky, the rain was torrential. Perhaps it was an illusion, but I thought I could feel the dampness. In a daze, my thoughts drifted back to that day. The day I broke up with Victoria, the rain had been just as heavy. Victoria clung to my arm, her eyes pleading. "Aji, please, let's not break up, okay?" I just turned my head away, biting my lip to hold back the tears. "Victoria, don't think I don't know what you're up to. You're just clinging to me because I'm the Sinclair heir now, aren't you? Afraid to lose your meal ticket?" I watched as the light in her eyes slowly died and I squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them again, they were ice cold. "Let me be honest with you. I'm sick and tired of pinching pennies with you. If you know what's good for you, get out of my life. We're not from the same world anymore." Victoria's grip loosened, and she collapsed to the ground. The girl who always took such pride in her appearance was soaked and covered in mud, and I knew that I had lost everything. As I turned to leave, I heard Victoria's desperate cry from behind me. "Sincere Clark, you'll regret this." Those painful memories rushed back like a tidal wave. I think perhaps that rain never really stopped. Victoria's gaze drifted into the distance, her thoughts unreadable. Suddenly, a figure rushed out. My heart stopped. It was my dad. "Please, I'm begging you, tell me where my Aji is." My dad knelt before Ethan, crying like a child. The mask on Ethan's face finally cracked. "Dad, are you confused? You're not my son." My dad's voice was resolute. Victoria seemed to sense that something was wrong. "Mr. Clark, what do you mean by that?" Chapter 6. Before my dad could speak, a sharp voice cut him off. Dad, realizing his tone, Ethan softened his voice. "Dad, did you forget to take your medicine today? Are you feeling confused again?" As he spoke, a group of men dressed as doctors hurried over. "Mr. Sinclair, our apologies. Your instructions." Ethan shot them a look, and the man stammered and fell silent. "What's with this nice guy act? Weren't you the one who locked me up in the sanatorium?" My dad sneered, his face hard. Ethan's expression stiffened, but he quickly regained control. "Dad, be good. And go back with the doctors to take your medicine, okay? The doctors beside him quickly restrained my dad's arms. Watching my dad struggle in pain, I rushed forward but could do nothing. My dad yelled, but a sedative was injected into his arm. He quickly fell quiet and was led away to a car. Ethan frowned, his face etched with sorrow. "Vicky, I didn't want you to know about this. After my dad had his tumor removed, he lost part of his memory. He only remembers Sincere as his son. I had no choice but to send him to a sanatorium." As he spoke, the man raised his reddened eyes. "Vicky, I know you care a lot about my dad, which is why I didn't want to trouble you with this." Listening from the side, every cell in my body screamed. How could Ethan be so sanctimonious, twisting the truth like this, and yet Victoria looked completely moved. "Ethan, you fool." She rested her head on his shoulder. "How can there be someone as good as you in this world?" Ethan smiled, leaning down to kiss the top of her head. The air around them was thick with happiness, but I was trembling uncontrollably. "Victoria, oh Victoria, has love blinded you completely? During those 5 years abroad, you exchanged sweet nothings with the very person who orchestrated my death. Did you ever even think of me?" A question began to form in my mind. Can a person really change that much? Or perhaps this was who Victoria always was. Maybe the cracks in our relationship had been there all along. She had grown tired of me, and the act I put on was just the final push. Chapter 7. As I thought this, little details from my memory began to surface. After Victoria started tutoring Ethan, there had been subtle changes. She started taking the Sinclair's car home every day, telling me not to bother picking her up from the bus stop. She stopped eating the meals I cooked, saying she had already eaten at the Sinclair's. Perhaps our love had already rotted away. I didn't follow Victoria and Ethan. Instead, I just left. I drifted aimlessly until I reached the sanatorium. Through the window, I saw my dad lying quietly in bed. His hair was now mostly white. I slowly closed my eyes. He must have suspected something. Right before I went into the operating room, my dad had gripped my hand tightly. "Aji, tell me the truth. Are you hiding something from me?" Despite my best efforts to act normal during that time, he had noticed something was wrong. But how could I act as if nothing was happening? I knew with absolute certainty that I was about to leave this world. A blade hung over my head at every moment. Even so, I had to comfort my dad. "Dad, don't overthink it. The surgery's about to start. I'll be waiting for you outside." The moment the operating room doors closed, tears streamed down my face. My dad would not see me waiting. When the doctor announced the surgery was a success, I turned and left with a sense of relief. Then I rushed to the airport. I had to see Victoria off one last time. After this, I would sleep forever, while her future would be a wide open road. The rain fell harder, pulling my thoughts back to the present. After some thought, I drifted back to the old Sinclair estate. I stood quietly on the back hill, looking at a large tree. There was a reason for this. Beneath that tree lay my bones. After the heart transplant, to make their story complete, Marcus and Eleanor Sinclair proposed burying me in the Sinclair family cemetery. But Ethan refused, adamant. "I don't want that pauper defiling our Sinclair family." After some discussion, they set up an empty, nameless tomb for me in the cemetery. To ensure there were no loose ends, my actual remains were buried unceremoniously under this tree, and I had watched the entire process floating in the air. Perhaps this is why I linger in this world. No peace in death, a rootless soul. The sky was ominously dark, and the rain showed no signs of stopping. This had to be the heaviest rain this city had seen in a decade. Chapter 8. Staring at the distant sky, I felt a chill run through me. I found a place to shelter from the rain and returned to Victoria's apartment early the next morning. I wanted to see just how long Ethan could keep up his act. Looking at the clothes scattered on the floor, my heart was already calm. A phone rang, and Ethan tiptoed out of the room. "Dad, what's up?" I tensed. He must be talking to Marcus Sinclair. I don't know what was said on the other end, but the man's voice suddenly shot up. Realizing his outburst, Ethan lowered his voice. Damn this weather. If it's been washed out, just put it back, he paused, thinking. Dad, you have to handle this for me. Perhaps the man was too engrossed, as he didn't even notice Victoria walk up behind him. Ethan, a pair of hands wrapped loosely around his waist. Has Mr. Clark recovered his memory? Ethan's body visibly stiffened. He knew exactly which dad Victoria was talking about. How would he answer this one? I was curious. After a long pause, he finally spoke. Vicky, my dad is still the same. He keeps calling me thinking I'm sincere. To avoid upsetting him, I just have to play along. Victoria accepted this explanation without further questions. Ethan let out a sigh of relief and coaxed her back into the room. Then he dialed the number again. Dad, I don't care how you handle it, but I will never allow him to be buried. In our family cemetery, only then did I understand the full picture. It seemed the heavy rain yesterday had washed my remains out of the ground. But what a venomous heart this man had that he wouldn't even grant me a proper burial. When Victoria left, I followed her. I didn't expect her to go to the Sinclair estate. Miss Graham, what can we do for you? She was a different person now, and it showed. Marcus and Eleanor Sinclair were exceedingly respectful, not daring to slight her. I came today to ask one thing. Where is Sincere Clark now? She was certainly persistent about me. Marcus froze for a moment before answering. Aji is still traveling abroad. I pursed my lips. It seemed they had their stories straight, but if I wanted to leave this world, my only hope was for someone to uncover the truth. Could that person be Victoria? I didn't know. Chapter 9. Hearing this answer, Victoria's brows furrowed tightly. He hasn't come back yet? Eleanor Sinclair's hand trembled as she poured tea, placing the pot aside. We feel we owe Aji a great deal, so we won't stand in the way of whatever he wants to do. The words were flawless, leaving no room for suspicion. Victoria lowered her head and spoke, feigning nonchalance. Give me Sincere Clark's contact information. Not only Marcus and Eleanor, but I too was surprised by her persistence. Aji said he wanted to make a clean break from his past life. He only sends postcards from time to time, Marcus said. Eleanor, in perfect coordination, pulled some out from under the table. Victoria took them, glanced at them for a second, and tossed them aside. He's certainly enjoying himself. I looked over. They were all scenic photos with no faces. A few were taken on a yacht, group shots with a bunch of beautiful women. But I was certain these photos were fake. It seemed they had prepared thoroughly, painting me as a playboy, living it up abroad. Who would ever know that I was forever bound to the cold earth? After leaving the Sinclairs, Victoria didn't return to the apartment. I followed her to a place I knew all too well, an old residential complex, the one where we grew up. She took out a key and opened the door to my old home. But I remembered selling the house to pay for my dad's medical bills. It seemed Victoria had bought it. Victoria entered my old room, her hands tracing over every surface with an almost tender touch. I stood blankly. What was she doing now? Then I heard her barely audible whisper, Aji, I told you would regret this. A bitter laugh escaped my throat unexpectedly. In that moment, I finally understood. How stupid I've been. I had misjudged her completely. Because of one act, she had hated me for all these years. Did she really believe I was a gold digger? I admit, on the day of the breakup, I was torn. I was afraid she would believe me, and afraid she wouldn't. I didn't want to drag her down, but who would want to hurt the person they love like that? Powerless, I struggled and finally gave in. Let me be the bad guy this one time. But I always thought she would eventually move on. I hoped that in her memories I would occupy a fond corner. When my ultimate sacrifice became a joke, my heart felt as if it had plunged into endless darkness. Chapter 10. Victoria lay quietly on my bed. From day to night, if I couldn't see the slight rise and fall of her chest, I would have thought something had happened to her. Finally, she slowly opened her eyes and turned her phone back on. A call came in. "Ethan, I'm coming home now." Her voice was gentle, almost sweet enough to drown in. Victoria got up without a second thought and left, as if her visit today had been nothing but an illusion. As soon as she got home, Ethan played his old trick again. "Vicky, where were you? I missed you so much. I don't know why, but my chest started hurting a lot today." The man rested his head on Victoria's shoulder. She immediately grew concerned. "Ethan, should I take you to the hospital?" Ethan didn't refuse, obediently letting Victoria help him out the door. Ethan lay in the hospital bed with a pale face. I followed Victoria to the doctor's office. "Doctor, is Ethan's heart okay?" the woman asked, seeming extremely worried and restless. I realized this was the surgeon who had performed the heart transplant. "Please don't worry, family member. I performed the patient's heart transplant myself. The surgery was very successful. The person in the car accident was a perfect match for the patient. They were born on the same day." What a coincidence. The doctor's casual remark made Victoria freeze for a long time. Born on the same day. She looked as if her soul had been ripped out, until the sharp ring of her phone broke the silence. "The police department? I'll be right there." Victoria staggered, seeming flustered. In contrast, I was relatively calm. I already had a good idea of what was happening. When she arrived at the police station, an officer showed her something, and Victoria broke down. "Do you recognize the owner of this ring?" Victoria nodded, then shook her head, like a madwoman. "No, this has to be fake. Yes, this must be fake." She snatched the ring and held it up to the light. When she saw the engraving inside, she covered her face and began to sob. She recognized it. It was the matching ring we had forged together with our own hands. Engraved on the inside were our initials. On the day we broke up, she had taken it off and thrown it into the bushes by the road. But I had gone back to find it after she left. It took me a long time. After a while, Victoria's sobs subsided. She slowly slipped the ring onto her ring finger. It was a perfect fit. Chapter 11. Victoria suddenly laughed, looking up at the officer. "Officer, you wanted to ask me something?" I knew that someone as smart as Victoria must have figured it out. Ms. Graham, a sanitation worker on the outskirts of the city, found a human hand bone, a good luck charm, and this ring at the base of a hill. The information inside the charm was yours, so we contacted you to ask for some information about the owner of the hand bone. That good luck charm was indeed something I was clutching tightly when I died. The feeling of bleeding out was so desperate, like I was falling endlessly into an abyss. Hearing this, the last thread of composure in Victoria's mind snapped. "It can't be Aji's. He's still abroad." The officer caught the key part of her sentence and asked, "What is the full name of the Aji you mentioned?" "Sincere Clark. His name is Sincere Clark, but he went abroad 5 years ago. It can't possibly be him." The officer at the computer typed, his expression growing more and more grim. "Miss Graham, the Sincere Clark you mentioned has no record of ever leaving the country." "Fake, it must be fake." The woman suddenly became agitated, her expression frantic. "Miss Graham, please calm down. The hill is a private residential area. We've already sent people to investigate." At that moment, the woman's body jolted as if she had realized something. "Officer, I have an urgent matter to attend to." With that, she practically ran out of the station. Victoria floored it to the hospital and went straight to Ethan's room. But she stopped dead in her tracks outside the door. A fierce argument was erupting inside. "The police are investigating the back hill now. What do you want me to do if you had just agreed to bury him? In the cemetery, we wouldn't have all this trouble." Marcus Sinclair paced back and forth in the room, ranting. Seeing this, I couldn't help but sneer. The truth will always come out. "All right, Dad." Ethan softened his tone. "Sincere Clark is an outsider. Why should he be allowed in our family cemetery? It was his honor to contribute his heart. The money for his dad's treatment and Vicky's study abroad was paid in full. The priority now is to get past the police. We'll stick to our original story. We handled that car accident cleanly anyway." Through the door, Victoria's mouth hung open in shock. The conversation inside continued, but the woman moved as if her soul had been torn away. "Victoria, this act of deep affection you're putting on is truly nauseating." Then again I thought, I'll probably be able to leave soon. A sense of relief washed over me. Chapter 12. Victoria finally stopped at a street corner outside the hospital. The traffic was endless, people coming and going. Her eyes were vacant, as if searching for something. Across the crowd, our gazes met for a moment. She suddenly crouched down, tears falling one by one onto the pavement. Passers-by instinctively moved around her small figure. After what felt like an eternity, her phone rang. It didn't take much to guess who it was. Who else but Ethan? After answering the call, Victoria took a deep breath. "Ethan, don't worry, I'm on my way back." When Ethan saw Victoria's calm expression, his furrowed brow relaxed. "Vicky, where did you go? Also, I just realized the doctor I saw earlier was the one who performed my surgery. Did he say anything to you?" "Tisk, tisk." Ethan's attempt to play the victim had backfired. "The doctor said your heart is recovering very well, Ethan." Ethan lowered his eyes and picked up an apple from the side table. "Is that so? Vicky, let me peel an apple for you." Victoria's expression was unreadable as she suddenly spoke. "I just came from the police station." The man's hand paused, and a drop of red blood welled up. "Oh, why did the police want to see you?" Ethan's voice was a forced calm, full of holes to any listener. But Victoria didn't expose his lie. "The police found a good luck charm with my information next to a human bone. They just called me in to ask a few questions." The woman's tone was flat as she took Ethan's injured finger. "How could you be so careless? I'll get you a Band-Aid." Ethan carefully observed her expression. Only after confirming there were no cracks in her facade did he relax and smile. "It's nothing, Vicky. Just a small cut." But the woman was stubbornly insistent at that moment. "No, I'm getting you a Band-Aid. You have to take care of yourself, you know?" At that moment, I felt goosebumps all over my body. Was she really saying that to Ethan? At Victoria's strong insistence, Ethan had to stay in the hospital for a full-body checkup before being discharged. Chapter 13. The next morning, the TV in the VIP room broadcast a news story. It reported that a human skeleton had been found buried on the back hill of a villa owned by Marcus Sinclair, a renowned local entrepreneur. Marcus Sinclair and his wife immediately held a press conference to clarify. "Please, everyone, don't misunderstand. That was our son, Sincere Clark. He passed away in a car accident 5 years ago. You may not know, but he only returned to the Sinclair family at the age of 22. My wife and I couldn't bear the pain of losing our son, so we buried Aji on the hill closest to us. But we also set up a cenotaph for him in the Sinclair family cemetery." On screen, the pair dabbed at their eyes, sobbing. Only I knew the filthy truth behind their performance. They would do anything for their biological son. The news was followed by a police statement, advising the public on proper burial practices for loved ones. I knew, of course, that this meant the police had found no evidence of murder. Throughout the news report, Victoria quietly fed Ethan his soup. The man in the hospital bed finally let down his guard completely. "Vicky, I can't believe Sincere passed away." He paused for a moment, Victoria, calmly set down the soup bowl and wiped Ethan's mouth with a napkin. "Ethan, Sincere and I made a clean break a long time ago. We're about to get married. Why bring up someone irrelevant?" Hearing this, a look of immense joy spread across Ethan's face. "Vicky, I'm so happy. We can finally be together." I twisted my lips into a sneer, my heart filled with sorrow. Victoria snuggled into Ethan's arms, pressing her head against his chest, right over his heart. I heard her whisper, "Yes, we can finally be together." After leaving the hospital, Ethan threw himself into planning the wedding. He had no idea what Victoria, who claimed to be busy with work, was actually doing. In just 1 month, she brought the Sinclair family's company to its knees. At the final bidding conference, Victoria snatched the crucial project. That could have been the Sinclair Corporation's last chance to recover. Afterward, I followed her back to the Sinclair estate once more. "I want Sincere Clark's remains." That was the first thing Victoria said. Marcus Sinclair staggered, and Eleanor Sinclair collapsed onto the sofa. They knew it was all over. "Can't you just let Ethan go?" Marcus truly loved his son with all his heart. The woman let out a short, sharp laugh. "Don't worry. I won't touch Ethan. All you have to do is go to the police and confess to all of your crimes." Chapter 14. That night, the news that a famous entrepreneur had staged a grand drama to secure a heart for his son became the top trending topic. Marcus and Eleanor Sinclair were imprisoned, and the company they had built over many years was destroyed. When Ethan learned from the news that his parents were in jail, he could only force himself to remain calm. "Vicky, I honestly didn't know the heart I received belonged to Sincere." Victoria stared at him, her gaze piercing. "Ethan, of course I believe you." The day before the wedding, Victoria snuck away to the sanatorium where my dad was staying. "Mr. Clark, I came to see you." My dad ignored Victoria's almost fawning attitude. "Aji is dead. I saw the news. I guess that foolish child traded his life for my treatment and your chance to go abroad." Seeing the color drain from the woman's face, my dad coughed heavily. "Get out. I don't want to see you." I desperately wanted to help soothe his coughing, but I was powerless. The woman dropped to her knees in front of my dad with a thud. "I will get justice for Aji." Victoria's eyes were bloodshot, and she suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. My dad turned his head away and muttered that she deserved it. She did deserve it. This was all her own doing. The scale of Victoria and Ethan's wedding was the talk of the city. But on that day, no one saw the bride or the groom. In a cemetery on the outskirts of the city, Ethan knelt before a gravestone. The man's face was pressed against the cold stone, his eyes filled with rage and disbelief. "Victoria, you lied to me because the gravestone was clearly engraved beloved husband, Sincere Clark." Victoria laughed loudly, tears streaming from the corners of her eyes. "Ethan, aren't you tired after acting for all these years? You killed my Aji." I watched from the side, my heart completely still. The sunlight fell on my body, and I knew I was about to disappear. Ethan suddenly started screaming like a madman. "What does that pauper have that I don't now? His woman and his heart are both mine." Hearing this, I couldn't stop my body from trembling. Victoria, unable to bear it any longer, pulled out a knife and plunged it into Ethan's heart. I stared at the scene before me in utter disbelief. Victoria had truly gone mad. "This is what you owe Aji, now it's time to pay it back." Ethan seemed to have been drugged. He had no strength to resist. Blood pooled on the ground. Victoria smiled with satisfaction. "The feeling of bleeding out isn't pleasant, is it?" To my astonishment, she then used the same knife on herself. The woman slowly collapsed, but her gaze gradually came into focus. "Aji, look. I've avenged you." I don't know how she could see me. My body was slowly becoming transparent. "Victoria, this feigned affection of yours is nauseating." In the very end, the last thing I saw was Victoria's face contorted in pain, her eyes wide open. But it no longer had anything to do with me. I am about to be reborn. The day my mother left us for a long-lost love, my father became the town's laughingstock. Her old flame is rich and educated. No wonder she looks down on an illiterate bumpkin like you. He worked himself to the bone for 30 years to raise a delicate flower, only for someone else to pluck her away. Who knows, maybe the kid he raised wasn't even his. How pathetic. I couldn't stand it and rushed forward to argue, but my girlfriend pulled me back. "So what if you got into a top university, Sincere? You'll never escape the confines of these mountains. But Mr. Templeton's family has been living in the city for years. His son can give me the best life. Let's call off our engagement." I didn't say a word. I ran to my father. Dad, let's leave together. Let's go see the big city. Half a month later, a villager's shout echoed through my ex-girlfriend's wedding reception. Fire, go put it out, Sincere Johnson's house is on fire. As I walked through the fields, I saw my father bent over, pulling weeds. Under the blazing sun, his face was flushed red. Dad, stop, take a break. I took his hand, stopping him from continuing the pointless task. The field was already perfectly weeded. My father straightened up, his eyes rimmed with red, his voice hoarse and weary. Sincere, I'm sorry. Your mom was right. I'm useless, just a bumpkin my whole life. If that man is really your biological father, you should go with your mom. A pang of sorrow hit me, and I cut him off. I'd heard that after my dad saved my mom from the river, it was love at first sight for him. To win her family's approval for their marriage, he'd braved the mountains and had his ribs broken by a wild boar. Before he could even recover, he heard villagers gossiping about my mom, and for the first time in his life, this honest man got into a fight. It left him with chronic pain that he endured for the better part of his life. I vaguely remember being a child, nestled in my mother's arms, and seeing her eyes light up as she spoke of that moment. She said that was the version of him she loved most. I brought up this memory, trying to comfort my father. He shook his head, his expression desolate. She said she's already wasted decades on me, that if I truly cared for her, I should let her go. I froze, my heart aching for the decades of my father's thankless devotion. No matter how the villagers whispered behind his back that I might not be his biological son, he never doubted my mother. He gave us the best he could, working like an ox for this family without a single complaint. Dad, come with me. I pulled the acceptance letter from my pocket. I had just picked it up from town that morning and hadn't even had the chance to share the good news before I heard the devastating announcement that my mother was leaving. A flicker of pride crossed my father's face. I knew my son. No, I knew you could do it. Then, as if remembering something, he added, Then let's ask April to come with us. I swallowed the bitter taste in my mouth. No, she's getting married. My father stood blankly for a moment, then nodded. That's for the best, I suppose. A girl can't just follow you without a proper commitment. I gave a self-deprecating smirk. She's marrying someone else. My father shot to his feet, his face a mask of disbelief. After all, April Gable and I had grown up together, and our relationship had always been stable. He had watched her grow up. He never imagined he could have misjudged her so completely. He lowered his head, a hint of self-blame in his voice. It's because I'm useless. I've held you back. I suppressed the ache in my heart. Dad, it's not our fault. Anything that can be lost was never truly ours to begin with. My father looked up, his gaze fixed on me. After a long silence, he nodded as if he had made up his mind. All right, wherever you want to go, Dad will always support you. With the start of the semester a month away, I set aside 2 weeks to pack everything up, knowing my dad and I would be living in a strange city for the next few years. I sent my father home to rest. As I was about to leave, I saw April Gable standing outside the door with a man. Following my gaze, she introduced him awkwardly. This is my fiancé, Ethan Templeton. He was the son of my mother's old flame, Saul Templeton. Ethan Templeton frowned, a look of feigned shame on his face. April told me you've taken good care of her over the years. I know you're upset, but it was love at first sight for April and me. You can't be like your father, tying someone who doesn't love you to your side for decades, can you? He said the most repulsive things in the most polite tone. Anger surged within me, and I shot him a fierce glare. So you like to interfere in other people's relationships, just like your father? Chapter 2. You're talking nonsense, putting on his city-bred airs and seeing he couldn't win the argument. Ethan Templeton switched tactics, clutching his chest as if in pain. April Gable immediately shielded him protectively. Sincere Johnson, how can you say such nasty things? Ethan darling came to see you out of kindness and even brought you this expensive milk candy. You can't be so heartless. She tossed a small bag at me, containing just a few pieces of candy. I felt the blood rush to my head. Say that again, this is what she calls heartless? Was I supposed to cheerfully entertain my ex-girlfriend and her new fiancé as they came to humiliate me? April seemed to have forgotten. I used to bring her the same kind of candy every time I went to the county town. The sweet girl from my memories who used to call me Big Bro Sincere was a complete stranger now. I felt nothing but distance. I pushed her hand away. Take it back, I don't need your charity. April stomped her foot in anger. Your mom was right. After all, you're both just ill-mannered bumpkins, destined to be looked down on your whole lives. Her words hung in the suddenly silent air. I fought to suppress the sting in my nose. Are you finished? She bit her lip, a flash of regret crossing her face. So that's how Mom really saw Dad and me. I let out a self-mocking laugh and turned to walk towards the village chief's house, where I got 2 letters of introduction. Before leaving, I gave him some homemade cured meat. Chief, please keep these letters a secret for me. Elder Hemlock patted my shoulder. When you make something of yourself, be good to your father. He's had a hard life. I nodded. As I was leaving the chief's house, I ran into a familiar figure. Sincere, what are you doing here? The woman wore a well-tailored dress, her hair in a braid down one side. Her skin, untouched by sun and wind, was still fair, showing no signs of her nearly 40 years. It was my mother, Helen Vance. I discreetly slipped the letters into my pocket. We had some extra cured meat, so I brought some for the chief. She frowned. You can barely take care of yourselves. Anyway, I have something important to tell you. Come with me tomorrow. I'll take you to meet your father. I felt like I'd been struck by lightning and shot my head up to look at her. How could she? Just today, she had made my father a laughingstock. Everyone was gossiping about her running off with her old flame, and now she was demanding that I, her son, personally confirm the rumors and deliver the final, most painful blow to my dad. Clark Johnson will always be my real father. I have no other. She grew impatient. I'm your mother. Would I ever harm you? I'm thinking of your future. Saul works at the food processing plant. If you acknowledge your real family, you could have a stable job. I don't want it. Helen's face darkened completely. Do you want to be a farmer your whole life, useless like Clark Johnson? I'd be happy to. What about me? 2 voices spoke at once. April Gable emerged from behind a tree, her expression mournful. So what they said was true. You really are a Templeton. You had a chance to be with me. Big Bro Sincere, after all our years together, how can you be so heartless? Her voice trembled as if I were the villain who had wronged them. But this time, I would never give in. I took one last deep look at Helen Vance and asked a single question. Is Saul Templeton really my biological father? Ignoring her instantly pale face, I turned and walked away. Chapter 3. With only a few days left before our departure, I took some time to go and buy train tickets to Rongsheng. The trains were infrequent, and after waiting in line for half the day, it was late afternoon by the time I returned to the village. From a distance, I saw a crowd gathered around the low wall of my house. I could faintly hear a sharp female voice coming from inside. You know Sincere isn't your son, so why are you clinging to him? Isn't it enough that you've trapped me by your side all these years? Do you want your son to end up a farmer just like you? If you truly care about him, you'll let him come back to the Templeton family with me. My father's lips trembled as he tried to argue, but all he could do was mumble repeatedly, No, that's not it. Sincere said I'm his father. That's because he's a good son. You're just using his sense of duty to ruin his life. The spine that had stood tall his whole life suddenly seemed to bend. I rushed in to support him, meeting Helen Vance's eyes, and for the first time I felt true hatred. How cruel she was telling the whole world that my dad was a fool who'd raised another man's son. Now she was forcing him to face the loss of his family and public condemnation. Her expression that day told me she wasn't even sure I was Saul's son. She was just making a scene to gain the upper hand. By loudly proclaiming I was Saul's biological son, she not only crushed my father's dignity and pleased Saul, but also laid the groundwork for her own position in the Templeton family. My dad is right. I said, staring at Helen Vance, enunciating each word. Clark Johnson is my father. Helen's eyes reddened with fury, her finger trembling as she pointed at me. Fine, don't you regret this? Stick with him, and you'll see your future is a dead end with that. She turned and stormed away. My father sat on the ground, heartbroken. Actually, your mother is right. I can't be so selfish. I shook my head. My mother doesn't want me. Are you going to abandon me too? Bro, just remember to take me with you when you make it big. Don't be a stranger when you need the money most. I clapped him on the shoulder, accepting his kindness. After setting a time to meet up, I went to the supply store to buy some dry rations. Rongcheng was far away, a 3-day, 2-night train ride. My dad's health had never been great due to an old injury, and I didn't want him to suffer on the journey. Before I could finish my shopping, an urgent voice interrupted me. Sincere, come with me. Quick, your dad fell, hit his head, and is bleeding badly. He's been taken to the county hospital. Chapter 4. My heart dropped. Without thinking, I followed the man. What happened? Is it serious? The man's eyes darted around, and a sliver of suspicion grew in me. But the situation didn't allow for hesitation. I couldn't take the risk. Even if it was a lie, it was a gamble I couldn't afford to lose. We quickly reached the hospital. The man pointed me in a direction and then vanished. I hurried over and saw only April Gable. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. You're here quick, Mr. Templeton needs a blood transfusion. He's bleeding heavily and is in critical condition. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Where's his real son? You go to all this trouble to trick me here, but his own son is nowhere to be seen? April bit her lip and then dropped to her knees before me. Sincere, bro, I know we both wronged you, but he's your biological father. Ethan is too frail, he can't give blood. Only you can save him. I ignored her and turned to leave, but a sharp blow struck the back of my neck. I fought through the dizziness to look back. Ethan Templeton stood there, the hand holding the club trembling slightly. Helen Vance stood beside him, her face devoid of expression. Panic seized me. My last thought before I lost consciousness was that our train tickets were for tomorrow night. I had to make it. When I woke up again, it was the next morning. Sean was sitting by my bed. He breathed a sigh of relief when he saw my eyes open. The doctor said you lost so much blood you might not wake up. You scared me to death. I managed to prop myself up and whispered in his ear, Sean, I need you to do me a favor. That afternoon, Sean secretly brought my father to the county town. Carrying our luggage, we caught the evening train. April and Ethan's wedding banquet proceeded as planned. Just as the celebration reached its peak, a villager's shout came from outside. Sincere Johnson's house is on fire, everyone. Help put it out. Helen and April stared at the house, now burned to ashes, their faces pale. Isn't Sincere still in the hospital? Sincere was discharged this afternoon and went home. Whatever they were thinking, my father and I had no time to care. Once on the train, the excitement of the journey ahead overshadowed any apprehension about leaving home. We passed mountains, hills, and lakes, arriving in a bustling, unfamiliar metropolis. The people here were dressed in stylish, sophisticated clothes, and the neon lights at night were dazzling. Bicycles, a rare sight in the county town, were commonplace here. My father looked around, taking it all in, over and over again. Even as he sat on the soft bed in our hotel room, he still seemed dazed. I never thought I'd come so far in my life, or sleep on such a soft bed. Coming from a small mountain village, taking a train with my dad, and starting university here, it was something we never would have dared to imagine before. Thinking about the future, a powerful wave of emotion washed over me. It was so intense that I almost overslept the next day. I went to the university to register first, picked up my books, and dropped off my luggage. Then I rushed out with my dad to find a place to live. We eventually rented a room near the campus for $15 a month. My dad's face was etched with pain as I paid the rent. I reassured him that I could only focus on my studies if he was comfortable. Besides, the money I had saved up could cover the rent for 2 years. We could figure out the rest later. Once we were settled, I dove into my demanding studies. I spent nearly every day shuttling between the campus, the library, and home. Sometimes, when experiments kept me out late, my dad would wait up to open the door for me, his own eyes red from lack of sleep. It pained me to see him like that. "Dad," I said, "I want you to have more of a life of your own." My father looked puzzled. Having spent most of his life sacrificing for his child, he didn't quite understand what that meant. I put my arm around his shoulder and asked him seriously, "Dad, have you ever thought about going to school?" He instinctively refused. "Don't be ridiculous. What would an old man like me do in school?" I explained patiently, "It has nothing to do with age. There are plenty of older students in night school. The only question is, do you want to? And don't worry about the money. The government has subsidies." I had anticipated his objections. His lips moved, but no words came out. Finally, slowly and deliberately, he nodded. He went from, "I can't do it," to "School is great, I'm learning so much." The smiles on my dad's face grew more and more frequent. My first year of university flew by, and my dad and I settled into life in Rongcheng. He developed his own circle of friends and, besides taking care of me, would occasionally go out with his peers, eagerly embracing the changing times. Meanwhile, I made many like-minded friends. Besides studying in labs, we talked about many things, and one name came up frequently: the great beauty of the foreign language department, Victoria Sterling. As they talked about how beautiful and capable she was, my mind flashed back to the first day of school, to the lively and vibrant image of her hastily vaulting over a side wall. It was different from their descriptions, yet it felt so incredibly alive. Chapter 5. The coursework at Rongcheng University was demanding, but the school also emphasized a student's all-around development. To keep up with the latest breakthroughs in physics, I signed up for the English corner. My partner, as it turned out, was Victoria Sterling. As was the custom, we took turns quizzing each other on our progress. Looking up from a mountain of study materials, I stretched. "Ready to be tested?" A clear, pleasant voice sounded beside me, and I couldn't help but rub my ears. A perfect broadcaster's voice in fluent English. Miss Sterling was truly outstanding. As if she knew what I was thinking, she let out a soft laugh. "It's a basic requirement for us, just like you physics majors are required to be good at math. By the time you graduate, you'll be able to speak fluent English too." I nodded. I had gone from being too shy to speak to being able to stumble through a few sentences in front of others. Victoria had helped me immensely. I often awkwardly expressed my gratitude, wanting to do something for her in return. She would always say with a serious face, "When the time is right." When the English corner disbanded at the end of the academic year, I called out to her, "Miss Sterling, thank you for your dedicated guidance this whole year. Would you mind if I bought you dinner?" Ignoring the frantic thumping of my heart, I extended the invitation cautiously. Of course, I took Miss Sterling to my family's restaurant. My father had opened it 6 months prior. I was stunned when he first proposed the idea. Rongcheng was well positioned to catch the winds of new economic policies, but it was astonishing that my father, who had spent his life working the land, could have smelled this opportunity. His business acumen seemed exceptionally sharp. Thinking about the possibility of having a father to invest in me, I didn't hesitate to give him all my savings. In the 6 months since it opened, the restaurant had flourished. With its delicious food and affordable prices, it quickly captured a share of the market. When my father saw me arrive from the university, he came out of the kitchen to greet me. His eyes lit up with delight when he saw the girl beside me. I sighed, knowing exactly what he was thinking. Ever since the incident with April Gable, he'd been worried I would close myself off. I introduced them to each other. Victoria smiled charmingly. "Hello, Mr. Johnson. I've heard so much about how wonderful your food is. I'm in for a real treat today." My father beamed with joy at her flattery. I'm always hearing sincere talk about a smart, beautiful girl he knows. That must be you. You two chat, I'll go make you something delicious. After my dad went back to the kitchen, Victoria's clear, melodious laughter filled the air, her light breaths tickling my ear. A fierce heat rose to my face. "Smart and beautiful?" she teased. I shot her a glare. "Is there a problem?" When all of my father's specialty dishes filled the table, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of jealousy at the spread, which was even more lavish than when I came home for vacation. "It seems Miss Sterling is not only pleasant to listen to, but also a sweet talker." She laughed so hard she bent over. "Are you a child?" The sight of her, laughing until she was out of breath in our restaurant, became my most unforgettable memory of my sophomore year. Over the next 2 years, with no shared activities, we saw less of each other. She would occasionally test my spoken English to see if I had fallen behind. I would thank her for her tireless guidance by inviting her to the restaurant for a meal. Seeing this, my father grew secretly anxious. "What are you thinking? Vicky is such a wonderful girl. If she ends up with someone else, you'll have nothing but regrets." I nodded. I knew this all too well. "Dad, I need to establish my career before starting a family. I can't give her the happiness she deserves yet." Victoria came from a true family of scholars. Both her parents were distinguished diplomats. Barring any surprises, she was destined to become an outstanding diplomat herself. She's been cherished by her family her whole life. I don't want her to face any hardship because of me. My father, seeming to recall something, patted my shoulder wistfully and said no more. All I could do was study harder, desperately trying to close the gap between me and success, hoping fate would smile on me. In my senior year, I was accepted into the master's program on the strength of my excellent grades. Between assisting my professor with experiments and writing my thesis, my time was stretched to the limit. Slowly, I lost contact with Victoria. The next I heard of her, she had given up a career in diplomacy to go into foreign trade. Many people, including me, couldn't understand her choice. On impulse, I ran to find her, stopping in front of her out of breath. She just smiled, looking at me intently. "You don't have to ask, I'll tell you, because I love it and because I believe in it." Her gaze was focused and affectionate, as if she were talking about more than just her career choice. I had to dig my nails into my palm to stop my mind from racing. Finally, I crumbled under her gaze and asked, defeated and hopeful, "What about your parents? Don't they expect you to follow the path they've planned for you?" Her eyes sparkled. "They respect my choices completely." I clutched my chest, trying to calm my wildly beating heart. "Well then, Miss Sterling, do I have a chance to be your choice?" Chapter 6. Always have been. The only choice, under the guise of taking graduation photos, but with the secret intention of getting a picture with her. We took our first photo together. Our university days came to an end. Victoria and I were officially a couple. I thought we would have more time together. But for the next 3 years, we were both incredibly busy in our respective fields. My dad, seeing no grandchildren on the horizon, redoubled his efforts, determined to earn enough to support his future grandchildren for decades. His restaurant business boomed. In just a few years, he opened one branch after another, becoming a famous restaurateur, lauded by the media as a legendary self-made entrepreneur. He didn't stop there. He diligently studied the courses and books that Victoria and I recommended. He often told us, "You young people should rest when you're tired. Dad can still earn at those moments." We would look at each other and smile. How lucky we were to have a father like him. After successfully graduating with my master's degree, I proposed to Victoria. With the blessing of both our parents, we had a grand wedding. Not long after, however, a letter arrived from my old village. "Mother is gravely ill. Return at once." The handwriting was unfamiliar. It must have been sent by Ethan Templeton. It seemed they had seen the news reports about my father. I planned to go back alone. Victoria was in the early stages of her pregnancy and wasn't feeling well. I also didn't want my dad to have to make the trip. My opinion was unanimously rejected. In the end, my dad made the decision, hiring a bodyguard and buying 4 plane tickets. "There's no way we're letting you go back alone. They have numbers on their side. We can't be at a disadvantage." Before we left, without telling anyone, I made a trip to a hospital. As the plane landed on that familiar soil, I breathed in the air I had once missed so much. A wave of emotion washed over me. When I left, I never imagined what it would be like to return. No matter how well we hid it, there was no denying that both my dad and I had been deeply hurt here. I glanced at my dad and saw that he too was silent. I didn't disturb him, just shifted my position to let Victoria sleep more comfortably. She had been sleeping a lot ever since she became pregnant. If she hadn't insisted, I would never have wanted her to undertake such a grueling journey. After we landed, Dad chartered a car. We got in, and the car drove down the forest path, through the fields, and finally reached our destination. The moment the car entered the village, it drew a crowd. The villagers gathered, more excited than for the New Year festival. Is that a private car? The kind you only see on TV? Who's the big shot? This is so extravagant. I helped Victoria out of the car, and the villagers swarmed us. After a moment, someone asked uncertainly, "You're Clark and Sincere Johnson. You're not really dead?" I nodded. Perhaps it was the commanding presence of my dad and the bodyguard. Though their curiosity was immense, no one dared to touch us or ask too many questions. They exchanged glances and whispered among themselves. Sincere had good judgment back then, picking the father with potential. Who would have thought? The bumpkin who used to roll around in the mud is now in the newspapers. If I'd known it was so easy to make it big out there, I would have left too. Is it so hard to admit someone else is outstanding? If it were that easy, why didn't Saul Templeton succeed? He lost every penny he had. The people around us nodded in agreement. Looks like we underestimated Clark back then. See, he made it. I called out to two of the nearest villagers, about to ask for Helen Vance's current address. Just then, I heard a shocked female voice from behind me. Big Bro Sincere, Chapter 7. My face fell in annoyance. I couldn't believe the first person from my past I had to see was the one I least wanted to. April Gable rushed over, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. When she confirmed it was really me, her eyes reddened. "I knew you were okay." She took a few anxious steps forward, but I quickly put out a hand to block her, instinctively shielding Victoria behind me. She pressed her lips together, as if just noticing Victoria's presence, and a look of grievance flashed in her eyes. She demanded, her voice full of self-righteous indignation, "Who is she? Have you been with her all these years? How could you do this to me?" I found it laughable. We had both moved on long ago. Where did she get the nerve to bring up the past? If I recall correctly, I was this close to attending your wedding. Her breath hitched, and she shook her head frantically in denial. Big Bro Sincere, I was young and foolish back then. That's why I was deceived by Ethan Templeton. When I heard you died in the fire, I thought I'd never see you again. I cried for half a year until I nearly went blind. As she spoke, fresh tears streamed down her face. It was only then that I realized how important you were to me. For the sake of our many years together, can you please give me one more chance? It's been so long. I've missed you so much. Victoria couldn't take it anymore and retched. Terrified, I quickly patted her back. This was the first time Victoria had experienced morning sickness. She took a moment to recover. "I'm okay. It comes in waves." April's face darkened. She was about to say more, but my dad signaled the bodyguard, and April's mouth was promptly covered. They had anticipated potential trouble on our return and had arranged for security. I couldn't help but admire my dad's foresight. With Victoria pregnant, we had to be extra careful around these lunatics. We couldn't afford to be low-key. Let me go. Let me go, Big Bro Sincere. Don't you want to find your mom? I'll take you to her. Realizing she couldn't get any closer, April finally calmed down a little. She led the way, and we followed her to the most remote corner of the village. From a distance, we saw an old woman sitting at a doorway, shelling peanuts. She looked up at the sound of our approach, and her eyes lit up with intense surprise. "Clark, you're finally back." Helen Vance scrambled to her feet, nervously wringing her hands at her sides, then tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. The coldness and disdain were gone from her face, replaced by a bashful expression. But something had happened to her over the years. She had aged considerably. If they stood together now, they no longer looked like father and daughter, but more like younger brother and older sister. My father and I exchanged a look. We had suspected Helen was faking a serious illness to lure us back. The current situation came as no surprise. "Clark, I thought I'd never see you and our son again. The moment I knew you were lost in that fire, my world collapsed. I dug through the rubble, searching and searching, but I couldn't find your remains. I prayed to God countless times to bring you back to me. And thank heavens," he answered. "From now on, our family of 3 can be together again, and will never be separated, okay?" She looked at my dad with adoration, as if she were deeply in love with him. I had no doubt about my father's current appeal. As a successful, distinguished, and disciplined entrepreneur with a dignified bearing, he was undoubtedly the version of him Helen had once loved most. "Don't be ridiculous, Mrs. Templeton. A lifelong bumpkin like me isn't good enough for you." My dad's lips curled into a mocking smile. "Besides, Mrs. Templeton is already married. Bigamy is against the law." Hearing this, Helen frantically tried to explain. "No, that's not it. You are wonderful. It was I who was blind. I've already left Saul. Please come back, won't you? Our family of 3, we're the closest family there is." The mockery on his face deepened. "Speaking of which, I hate to even think about it. You 2 tried to take Sincere away from me. What kind of family is that?" "No, that was a moment of weakness. I just wanted to give Sincere enough." My dad cut Helen off impatiently. "Since you're alive and well, we'll be leaving. If you ever use an excuse like this to trick Sincere back here again, I swear I won't let you get away with it." Helen, as if suddenly remembering my presence, looked at me with pleading eyes. "Sincere, I'm your mother. You can't be so heartless and abandon your own mother." I gave her a cold glance. "The moment you knocked me out to give Saul Templeton my blood, you stopped being my mother." My dad's head shot up in shock beside me, and I realized my slip of the tongue. Furious, he kicked Helen hard. "This one's for my son. You don't deserve to be his mother when you die. Don't even think about contacting him with that." We walked away from the Templeton house. Victoria had been quiet and sullen, and I knew she was hurting for me. I quickly tried to distract her. A pregnant woman shouldn't be under stress. I led her to sit under a large tree. This was my favorite spot when I was a kid. Dad would be down there planting rice seedlings, and I'd sit here doing my homework after school. A gentle breeze blew, smoothing the wrinkles in our hearts, but that peace was abruptly shattered. Chapter 8. Ethan Templeton and a group of local thugs surrounded us. I immediately moved to protect Victoria. My dad and the bodyguard flanked her on either side. We were clearly outnumbered. Even a skilled bodyguard couldn't protect all of us. My only option was to stall for time. "Ethan, what are you doing?" Ethan pointed a trembling finger at me and yelled, "Why didn't you die out there? What did you come back for? Haven't you made our lives miserable enough?" I frowned, picking up on his words. "You and your father stole my mother and my girlfriend. I haven't even settled the score with you, and now you're turning it around on me?" Ethan's face grew even uglier. "If it weren't for your mother, my father wouldn't have had a stroke and become paralyzed. If it weren't for you, April and I could have been happy." From his disjointed complaints, I pieced together what had happened. After Helen married into their family, she was initially content with the material comforts Saul provided. But the more she saw, the more her ambitions grew. She watched others get rich from new ventures and convinced Saul to quit his job and gamble their entire life savings. They lost everything. Unable to accept this reality, Saul had a stroke and was left paralyzed. April, after my death, was genuinely heartbroken and realized that I was the one she truly loved. So right after their wedding, she fought constantly with Ethan, making him a laughingstock. He blamed me for all of it and was now determined to make me pay. Get them, teach them a lesson today. The thugs started closing in. I backed away, terrified they would hurt Victoria. Just then, the village chief arrived, his sharp voice halting the chaotic scene. "What's wrong with you? Do you want to be locked up again?" Ethan ground his teeth. "I'll let you go, but my father said it'll cost you. $100,000 to sever the ties of kinship. After all, you have our Templeton blood running through your veins. My dad gritted his teeth, about to agree, but I stopped him. $100,000 needs a witness, doesn't it? What if you go back on your word? Ethan, already seeing the money in his grasp, readily agreed. After they left, I clapped the new chief on the shoulder. Look at you now. The old chief, Elder Hemlock, had retired. The new chief was Sean. Time had erased the youthfulness from his face. Thanks, brother. You got here just in time. He punched me back playfully. Of course. You're a great talent from our village. How could I let anyone bully you? In that case, could you do me one more small favor? My family will fund and support the village's future development projects. Sean quickly gathered the villagers in the open square. As everyone wondered what was happening, I walked into the center of the crowd holding up a report. 8 years ago when I left, everyone thought I wasn't Clark Johnson's son. So before I came back, I went to a hospital and used the latest technology to confirm, with absolute certainty, that Clark Johnson and I share a biological father-son relationship. Of course, even without that biological tie, he is the only father I will ever acknowledge. I did this test, 1, to make certain people give up hope, and 2, to prove that my success is inherited entirely from Clark Johnson's excellent genes and has nothing to do with anyone else. Seeing the looks of despair and the pale faces of certain individuals, I admit, it felt good. On the edge of the crowd, my dad's eyes were red. He wiped away a tear, embarrassed. The woman standing by his side watched me, her gaze gentle and unwavering. I ran to them, the 2 people I love most in this world. After returning to Rongsheng, I quickly put the troublesome people from my past out of my mind. 6 months later, Victoria gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. By the time I got around to reading a letter from my old village, half a year had passed. The letter was from Sean. He detailed how the funds my father had donated were being used. He also mentioned what had become of the others. April Gable had tried to run away from home but was caught and dragged back by Ethan. They got into a huge fight, and in the chaos a candle was knocked over, setting their house on fire. They both could have escaped, but when they were found, their bodies were twisted together in a final struggle, neither willing to let the other go. Saul, unable to move, also perished in the fire. The only one to escape was Helen Vance, who happened to be out at the time. But without a home, her life was not easy. After reading the letter, I sent some money back with my reply, entrusting Sean with sending installment payments to my birth mother for her support. I didn't follow up after that. Life is long. The meal on my plate, the person by my side. The rest is just passing clouds.